How does the element terbium go from the universe to your cell phone? Well, the answer might be simpler than you think. Let's start with where this element came from in the first place. Think back to the Big Bang, all the way at the beginning of time. This explosive event produced the first two elements, hydrogen and helium. Inside stars, these elements fused repeatedly to create new elements, all the way up until iron. Since all of the elements that came after iron are very heavy, they required something more than just fusion to be able to form. That's where these massive, dense stars, known as neutron stars, come in. When two of these stars get close enough to one another, they enter an orbit together. This orbit, along with their very heavy masses, causes them to eventually spiral inward and merge. This merger leads to a huge explosion, which causes neutrons to shoot outwards and rapidly bombard any surrounding atoms. Scientists call this R-process neutron capture, and it is responsible for the production of many heavy, unstable isotopes, such as gadolinium-159. An isotope is just a fancy name for elements that have the same number of protons but a different number of neutrons. An unstable one decays, which means it turns into a different element, and keeps decaying until it turns into a stable element. For example, gadolinium-159 decays and eventually becomes terbium-159. Okay, so we just established that terbium has formed in outer space. How did it go from space to our planets? To answer that, we must understand how planets formed in the first place. Around 5 billion years ago, a giant cloud of stellar dust that scientists call a solar nebula collapsed and began rotating counterclockwise. The rotation caused the collapsed nebula to take the shape of a flattened disk, similar to the shape of a CD. Some matter that came out of the explosion concentrated in the center of the disk, creating an early form of the sun. Some hot gases that came from the explosion condensed and formed solids. These solids floating around in space kept colliding and combining and eventually formed very large solids, becoming planets. Meanwhile, the gases that did not condense, such as helium and hydrogen, moved to the outside of the disk and formed planets made mostly of gas. What about the Earth's formation specifically? The center of the Earth, called the core, formed when very hot iron inside the planet sank down to the middle to form an inner layer. Then, the remaining elements in the middle and outer layers became the mantle and the crust. To make the crust, the mantle went through something called partial melting. In this process, some minerals melted and some did not, with the ones that melted rising to form the crust and the ones that did not melt staying in the mantle. Terbium is one of the elements in the minerals that can be found in both the mantle and the crust. The major rock deposits and rock types that are mined for terbium are monazite, xenotime, and iron adsorption clays. These deposits are located in southern China, India, Malaysia, Vietnam, and Brazil. To mine terbium from these deposits, first, the mineral, for example monazite, is mined through either open pit or underground extraction. Open pit mining is a mining technique in which the top layers of the earth are removed to access minerals that are not very far underground. On the other hand, underground extraction is a mining technique that involves drilling down into the earth to access deposits that are just too deep for open pit mining. Since terbium is not the only metal that exists in monazite, we need special processes to extract and separate terbium from the other elements. To do this, first, the monazite undergoes acid digestion, which is a technique for breaking down and dissolving solids. Once the monazite has been dissolved, the next step is solvent extraction. In this process, terbium can be separated from the other metals based on its solubility. Solubility is a unique chemical property that describes the metal's ability to form a solution with another substance. Once the terbium is fully extracted, it is ready to be used in smartphones. In these devices, terbium is part of the screen in the form of green phosphors, which is responsible for emitting green light. This is because when terbium absorbs extra energy, it emits green light, making it very useful in screens. Terbium is also found in the phone's speakers. For the smartphone speakers to work, they must have small magnets inside of them. Terbium is added to these magnets to ensure the speakers will function properly at high temperatures. This is because terbium's electron arrangement allows magnets to be more resistant to demagnetization at high temperatures. Basically, you can consider terbium as both the smartphone's personal artist that only paints with the color green, as well as a cool glass of water for the smartphone speakers when it gets super hot. So, there you have it, the life of terbium, from its birth to its use in your cell phone.